In today's video, minions of the Galactic Empire battle a desert warlord for possession of downed spacecraft as we play a micro-sized game of Xenos Rampant from Osprey Games. Well, hello and welcome. My name is Lee, if you didn't know, and this is the Old Hammered YouTube channel. Today we're going to be playing some Xenos Rampant on a very small scale. So normally Lynn would help me out with this, but she is at a class today, so I will be piloting today's episode solo. And what we're going to do is try to play a very small-scale game of Xenos Rampant. If you saw our kind of overview about a week ago, I was lamenting how our 3x3 table here, our 3x3 mat, isn't really large enough to handle Xenos Rampant when it's on a 28mm scale. So I was racking my brain as to how we could do this. And then I remembered that a few years ago, maybe 2018, we were playing Gaslands with these Hot Wheels Star Wars cars. So we would modify them. So here is a land speeder. Luke is the original driver, but R2-D2 is a Galoob Micro Machine character that we glued in there. And then, of course, we picked up a gun from somewhere and put that on the hood. Likewise, Han Solo is piloting this car. This came out around the same time that the Solo movie was released. But Chewbacca is a Micro Machine, and I forget where we got the guns from. But anyway, as a result of that, I started picking up packs of these Galoob Micro Machine Star Wars soldiers and characters whenever I would see them at the flea market or, the swap meet or places like that. And these are roughly about 15mm, which means I can pack quite a few more of them on my 3x3 mat here. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. I've taken some of these small Galoob Micro Machine Star Wars figures, and they had quite a variety of them. I don't have all of these, but I have some of these. And I have glued them to acrylic bases, not with real glue, but with just blue tack here. And these are going to be our detachments for today's game. For vehicles, we'll be using some good old-fashioned Star Wars Hot Wheels. I think this A-Wing came out around 2017. And this AT-ST was released somewhere around 2015, I guess to coincide with Rogue One. And maybe these things are more expensive now, but they were pretty cheap when they were released. So this A-Wing here was about $5 at Walmart, I think. And I remember this fire spray was $4 at a local toy fair, so not very expensive at all. So for today's game, we're going to have two objectives. That is this crashed A-Wing here and the notorious pilot named Duke Skyjacker. And then here's a crashed fire spray with a Bonnie and Clyde type duo. And they have some secret information, as does the pilot of the A-Wing. And both the Empire and the local mob boss, the local mercenary who's taken over the rackets, want to get a hold of that information. So they're going to fight out here in the desert for possession of the A-Wing and the fire spray and any loot or information contained within. So the backbone of the Empire forces are 3 units of heavy infantry. These are all separate units. And they have the firefight rule, so if they get shot at, on a roll of 7, they can attempt to return fire. And this group of heavy infantry has Vader with them. So instead of being a very reasonable 2-point unit, they are now an expensive 6-point unit. They have Assault Doctrine, which means their attack value is now 5+. And Vader has his lightsaber, of course, which in the Xenos Rampant book is kind of represented by the rule Mono Molecular Blades, which means any 6s when he's attacking or defending count as 2 hits. Not shooting, but any hand-to-hand combat, he'll be able to get 2 hits on a 6. Apparently the Empire really wants to get his hands on the information and personnel in those crashed ships, so the Emperor himself has joined the fight. He is part of a unit of elite infantry. They have firefight as well, and they have heavy weapons, so when they're shooting, any 6s cause 2 hits. Unlike Vader's skill, which causes 2 hits in hand-to-hand combat. And then, of course, they are supported by an AT-ST Chicken Walker, which is a lightly armored vehicle. So the Walker is subject to the vehicle rules, which means he has a 180-degree arc of fire toward the front. He's allowed to move and shoot, which is something that normal troops can't do. But once he gets to half of his strength points or below, he's -1 on all activations, and he's at half maximum move, because the presumption is that the crew is trying to put out fires and patch holes in the armor while they're walking along. Unfortunately for the Empire, they will have to fight a veritable army of cutthroats and killers if they want to take possession of those ships. So here is the local Warlord and his elite guard. They are elite infantry. They have firefight. They also have armor piercing, which reduces target armor by 1. And they are infiltrators, which means they will be able to move up before the game starts and get into a better position. To support him in this endeavor, the Warlord has spread some credits around, so he has hired a mob of Berserk infantry right here, who are very good in hand-to-hand, but less so in shooting. They have the increased squad size rule, so there is a total of 10 of them. Normally there'd just be 5, but now there's 10, which is going to help them out in hand-to-hand quite a bit. Next, we have a 10-man unit of militia rabble. They're not really good at anything, but they only cost 1 point, so maybe they're just here for comic relief. Here is a 10-man unit of light infantry, which represents the local thugs helping out the Warlord. Then here is a greater xenomorph in the form of this monster, and a light vehicle here, a soft-skin vehicle, which also has a 180-degree forward arc for firing. It can move and shoot, and the Warlord has also ponied up to pay for some technical improvements on the tug, so it's a little bit more of a fighting vehicle than it would be normally. Okay, so that's a look at our two 24-point detachments. And the goal of today's game is each team wants to seize and hold these 2 down spacecraft. And to do that, they need to have a unit adjacent to the spacecraft and have no competing unit adjacent as well. So if both these guys are adjacent, it will be contested. If just one of them is adjacent, then they have seized the spacecraft for the moment. And if they hold it at the end of the game, then they get all the loot, the data, and anything else inside the spacecraft, as well as any bounty from the 2 fugitives who are piloting it. So normally, if you were playing Xenos Rampant, say with 28mm miniatures, you'd be playing it on something like a 4x4 mat. But obviously this gameplay area here is much smaller, and the miniatures are closer to 15mm. So I'm going to be measuring firing ranges and movement range and things like that with centimeters instead of inches, if I can remember. I'm sure I'm going to flub it up at least once or twice, but it's going to be a centimeters game rather than an inches game. So I'm going to roll to see which side is the attacker here in a moment, but the first thing I have to do is that the Warlord's entourage has infiltrate, so they get to move before the game starts, essentially. So they get to move their normal 8 centimeters, plus an additional 4, so that's 12 centimeters. So that's going to put them right about there. Gets them a little closer to the fire spray. Next, I'm going to roll to see which side is the attacking side. So it looks like the Empire detachment is going to be attacking. So on the Empire side, the Chicken Walker could get a free move action, so he doesn't have to roll for it. But all the rest of the units, all the heavy infantry and the elite infantry, have to roll a 5+ if they want to move. Fortunately, when the time comes to shoot, they're going to get free shooting actions, which is going to be pretty handy. The Chicken Walker could take a free move action now, and then shoot. As a vehicle, he can move and shoot. He would have to roll a 7+ to shoot, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold him for the moment, try to move some of these other guys, and then when the time comes, I will move him and then try to shoot if anybody's in range. So let's start with this unit of elite infantry with the Emperor. They need a 5+ to activate, and they got a 10, so they do activate, so they're going to move. They move 8 centimeters. That's going to put them about there. So they've activated. Next, we'll try to activate this unit of heavy infantry right here, just a regular unit of stormtroopers. They also activate on a 5+. 11, so they do activate. They're eager to activate. They only move 6 centimeters, so that's going to put them right about there. Now, it just occurs to me, by moving these guys here, I've kind of blocked Vader. I bottled him up for the moment, but let's see what happens with the rest of the detachment. So this unit of heavy infantry over here on the edge, 5+, and they got it, 9, they're doing very well. If they failed, of course, then the activation would flip over to the other side. The other team would get to activate. And they're going to move their 6. Trying to remember that these are centimeters instead of inches. Now what I'm going to do is move the Chicken Walker. He can move and shoot, so the move is free. He can move 6 centimeters for free, and then he can try to shoot if anybody's in range. Now, normally his weapon range is 18 inches, but because it has a range greater than 12 inches, he can shoot at extreme range if he wishes to. And extreme range means that you're shooting beyond your weapon's normal maximum range, and there is a benefit to the defender in a case like that. But I really should set some sort of maximum range on extreme range, so folks can't just shoot all the way across the board. So just for the sake of keeping things reasonable, I'm going to say that extreme range in this particular game is 30 centimeters. So there is no enemy within extreme range at this point. 30 centimeters would be kind of around in here, give or take. And then finally, I'll try to activate Vader just for the heck of it. And he didn't get it. He needed to roll a 5+ for an ordered activation. He got a 3. So the activations flip to the other team. The other team gets to go now. And fortunately, Vader's squad was the last squad that the Imperials had to activate. So it's no big loss other than the fact that he didn't get to move. But he's kind of bottled up anyway. So one advantage that the Warlord's attachment has is that a lot of his units get a free move action. Whereas on the Imperial side, a lot of those units get a free shoot action. So the Warlord is not going to have to roll very much right now to get some of his troops moving. But when they get into shooting, then that's going to be a whole different story. And the Imperials will kind of have an advantage there. Having said that, the Warlord's elite infantry here do have to roll to move. So they have to roll a 5+. They're going to try to get closer to the fire spray if they can. So 5+. And they got it. So they're going to move their 8 centimeters and try to get closer to the spaceship. So they've activated. Next, I'm going to activate these light infantry right here. As light infantry, they do get to move for free. They don't have to roll for it. So they're going to move their 8. And that'll put them right about there, give or take. This greater xenomorph also moves for free. He moves 10 centimeters. So he's going to rush up, move forward toward the middle of the fray. So the light infantry have activated, and the greater Xeno is activated. The berserk infantry right here also move for free. And again, when I say move for free, it's not an additional free action, it just means they don't have to roll for it. So that is the berserk infantry. They're good hand-to-hand attackers, but their defense isn't that great, and they're not that great at shooting. So we want to get them into a brawl if we can. Okay, so now I'm going to activate this jet bike here in the corner. Normally, something like this would have the skimmer rule, but I couldn't afford it, so it is a normal soft skin vehicle. What I spent the points on was the technical rule, which basically upgrades its attacking and its defense. So the bike has a movement of 12, which is pretty good. And if we're saying extreme range is about 30 centimeters, that would put it about right here. So he's not quite in range of the Chicken Walker or anybody else at this moment. And finally, we have the Rabble Militia over here. They're not much good for anything, but they were cheap, and I guess they could hold an objective in a pinch if no one else was available. And they move on a 6+. And they do not, so they refuse to move, which is not unusual for Rabble Militia. And so that is the end of the Warlord's turn, but he had moved everybody anyway, with the exception of these guys. So now we go back over to the Empire. Okay, so the Chicken Walker gets a free move. So he's going to move his 6. He's going to move kind of this way. If he was a vehicle with tracks or wheels, he would move a little faster. And if he was a soft skin vehicle, he would move 12. But he is a lightly armored walker, so he only moves 6. Next, the Emperor and his personal guard, his elite infantry, are going to try to move forward. They need a 5+. They got a 7, so they're fine. They move 8 because they're faster than heavy infantry. They've activated. Next, we'll try to move this squad of heavies right here and get them closer to the A-wing. They need a 5+. And they got a 9, so they're fine. So that's heavy infantry moving up toward the A-wing. Okay, next we're going to try to activate Vader and his squad of heavy infantry. So he needs a 5+. And he got it. Vader's moving up his 6. So he goes kind of like that. He's a little bit behind because he failed his activation on the first turn, if you remember. But I think that's all part of his insidious plan. He's got it all figured out. And finally, we have a squad of heavy infantry right here. They also need a 5+, which they got, so they move up 6. So they're moving up toward the A-wing as well. They're going to capture that Duke Skyjacker, one way or the other. So the Empire is advancing on all fronts, and Duke Skyjacker here is getting really nervous. Now the Warlord's Criminal Alliance gets to activate. Okay, as I said, a lot of these units, namely the Berserk Infantry, the Light Infantry, and the Xeno, and the Bike, get a free move. And the Elite Infantry here, the Warlord's Entourage, have to roll a 5+. So I could move these guys, but there's a slight chance they could fail, and then no one else would get to move. So I'm going to move some of the free guys first, and get them forward, and then I'll worry about the ones I have to roll for. So Berserk Infantry are going to move up about 8. We're going to go right over here, get some cover from this rock, I think. Next, I'm going to move the Greater Xeno. He has Wild Charge, so once he gets close to some enemies, at the beginning of the turn, he might have to roll for Wild Charge, but he's not close enough yet, so I'm not going to worry about that right this moment. But he's going to move up 10, which puts him around here. Now, I could try to move the Light Infantry, but I'm going to let them sit for just a second. I'm going to move the jet bike first, and I may shoot with him if he's in range to shoot somebody. So he's going to move his free 12 first. So the jet bike right here could try to shoot at the chicken walker or the elite infantry. They're going to get hard cover from this rock, and the chicken walker has quite a bit of armor. And since the bike is shooting at extreme range, that would increase the chicken walker's armor by another level. So the odds of the bike doing much damage is pretty minimal. And I don't want to lose the opportunity to try to move the Warlord's entourage and the light infantry. So we're not going to make that additional activation roll with the bike to try to shoot. We're just going to let him sit right now and line up a shot later if he can. Okay, so the Warlord's elite infantry are going to try to activate and get close to the fire spray. They need a 5+. And they just barely got it. So they're going to move up and take position behind the fire spray. There they are. They have captured the notorious Bonnie and Clyde duo here and the fire spray and whatever treasures lie within. But can they hold it? Can they hold it for the rest of the game? We shall see. Okay, next the light infantry are going to move. They get to move for free, basically. No rolling required. So they're going to move their 8, which would put them kind of over here, give or take. And finally, the militia rabble. They need a 6+. They got it, so they're going to move. So they move up 6 centimeters. They don't want to be left out if there's any spoils of war, but they don't want to put themselves at unnecessary risk either. Okay, now the Empire gets to go. So these elite infantry here can shoot for free, and they are just beyond regular range for shooting at the Greater Xeno. But they can shoot at extreme range, and shooting is a free action for them, so why not? So one advantage to them shooting at the Greater Xeno is he does not have the firefight rule, so there's no risk of him shooting back once they shoot at him. Okay, the Emperor's elite infantry unit are going to shoot. Their shoot value is 4+. They roll 10 dice because they're at full strength, so any 4+ is a hit. And let's see, what do we get here? That's 1. Not that many. First shooting of the game, and they got 4 hits. The Xeno's armor is 4, so it has quite a bit of armor, so that is enough to do 1 wound on the Xeno. So now he needs to take a courage roll because he took a hit from shooting. Even if you don't take a wound, if you took 1 hit from the shooter, then you still have to take a courage roll. So his courage score is 3+. He's within 12 inches of the leader, so he gets a buff. And he took 1 wound, so I think that's a minus. So he just needs to get a 3+ total. And he's fine. His courage holds. He's okay. So the Emperor's finest shot at the Greater Xeno. So this unit of heavy infantry right here is going to try to activate. They're going to try to move, so they need a 5+. 5+. They got it. They move 6 centimeters, so that's going to take them right to the edge of the A-Wing's tail fins there, so I guess we can say that's adjacent. So they have seized that objective, and Duke Skyjacker is very nervous about being in Imperial custody. Next, we'll activate this unit of stormtroopers over here. They're going to try to move. They need a 5+. 12. They really want to move. Their Imperial conditioning has kicked in, and they are going to move. So they're going to move kind of over this way. Move their 6. Next, we have Vader and his heavy infantry. They're going to try to move, so they need a 5+. And they got it. So they move their 6. And that puts them right about here. And finally, the Chicken Walker, he has a hankering to shoot somebody, so he's going to try to move and then shoot. He doesn't want to shoot at extreme range. He wants to get up close and personal and shoot at normal range. And blast away at the jet bike, because now he's within 18 inches, so he doesn't have to shoot at extreme range. The ATST needs to roll a 7+ to shoot after moving. And he gets it. According to the rules, most vehicles have a 180-degree firing arc toward the front, unless they have a turret or something. So the chicken walker is definitely within his arc. So he's shooting at a 4+. And the soft skin vehicle thankfully has an armor of 3 because of its technical improvements. Otherwise it would just be a 2 and it would be very vulnerable to blaster fire. So let's see what happens. So every 4+ is a hit. So we got 5 it looks like. The jet bike has an armor of 3. So the walker needs to score 3 hits to inflict 1 wound. These 2 hits are discarded. If I'd gotten 1 more 4+, that would have been an additional wound. But we got 1 wound because we got 3 hits. The jet bike does not have firefight, so it cannot try to return fire at this moment. But he does need to take a courage check. His courage is 4+. He took 1 wound, so that's going to make it a 5+. He is within 12 inches of the leader, so it's back down to 4+. So he just needs to get a 4 or better. And he did. He's fine. So I think that is all the Imperials right now. I think they all moved or shot. Now we go back over to the Desert Warlords. So no units are currently suppressed, and nobody is in range for wild charge quite yet, so that's fine. So we go into regular movement. We're going to get these light infantry moving. So they move 8, and they get to do it for free. So they're going to go this way. Takes them about to there. The Berserk infantry right here, they get a free move action. They move 8. Their shooting range is 12, so they're not quite in range to shoot anybody. So they've activated. The Greater Xeno right here is going to move. It's a free activation, and so he's going to move his 10. Put some pressure on the Emperor and his elite infantry. So then I have elite infantry, the jet bike, and the militia down here. So I think what the elite infantry are going to do is they're going to try to roll for a move, and they're going to kind of roll over here on this side of the fire spray while still maintaining contact. So that's a 5+ for them. And they're fine. So they're going to kind of just swoop over this way. So they activated. So I think what's going to happen is the jet bike here is going to take a free move. He's going to try to zip kind of over here. And he's going to shoot at the Emperor's elite infantry here. So he's in range for that. The bike needs to roll a 7+ to see if it can shoot after moving. And it can. So the bike is at full strength, so it rolls 10 dice. Its shoot value is 5+. The elite infantry have an armor of 4, and they also have the firefight rule, so they will be able to fire back if they make a roll of 7+. But let's see what happens. So the jet bike is firing. 5+ is what he's looking for. So got 4 of them. That is enough to take out 1 member of the elite infantry. So one of the Emperor's finest is killed. So they're down from 5 to 4. They're going to roll to see if they can engage in a firefight. So they're going to roll to see if they can fire back. They need a 7+. 10, they get it, so they're going to fire back. Their shoot value is a 4+. Lots of 4s, plus they have a heavy weapon, which means that every 6 causes 2 hits. So this is bad news for the bike. So there's 4 6s there, so that is 8 hits. 9, 10, 11 hits on the bike, who has an armor of 3, so let's see. 4, 8, 9. So 3 wounds off the bike. He gets perforated by the heavy weapon, which brings him down to just 1. He's got 1 wound left. So both parties need to take a courage check because they both took hits from shooting. The Emperor's finest have a courage of 3+, plus the Emperor's with them, and they took 1 casualty, so they still need a 3+. And they got it, just barely. They were shaken. They thought they were invulnerable to harm, but the jet bike killed one of their members. So the bike is going to struggle a little bit because he took 3 wounds in this exchange. So his courage is normally 4+. He's going to get a bonus because he's within 12 centimeters of the Warlord. So let's say that takes it to a 3+. But he's going to get a -3 on his roll because he took 3 wounds in the exchange. And because he's at half strength, he only gets to roll 1 die and not 2. So he's going to roll 1 die, -3, and he needs a 3 or better. So 3 minus 3 is 0, which means he routes. So the bike is trailing smoke, and he decides to make a beeline off into the desert rather than getting shot by blaster fire. So that is the first unit casualty of the game, is the jet bike. But he did kill one of the Emperor's finest. And finally, let's roll for the militia rabble, see if they can do something. So they're going to try to move on a 6+. And they do not. They refuse to move. So that is the end of the Warlord's turn. Okay, now the Empire gets to go. Let's see if we can put all of that firepower to good use. So these elite infantry get to shoot for free. They're going to shoot at the Greater Xeno before he can wild charge them. Shooting with 10 dice because they're above 50% strength, and their shoot value is 4+. So 1, 2, 3. Not as good as before. They didn't get any 6s, so their heavy weapons didn't do them any good. So that is 3 hits on the Greater Xeno. His armor is 4, so he doesn't take any wounds from that, but he still has to roll for courage. And he's fine. He got an 11, so no worries there. He's going to wild charge the heck out of those guys on the next turn. So this heavy infantry unit here is in range to shoot the berserk infantry here. They're within 18 centimeters. So that is a free action on the part of the stormtroopers here. They're rolling 10 dice with a shoot value of 6 because it's just a 5-man unit. And they only scored a single hit on the berserk infantry, which is not enough to cause any wounds. But the berserkers still need to make a courage check, which they pass. So, these heavy infantry activated. I think these stormtroopers here are just going to kind of stay where they are. They're going to try to guard the A-wing. And Vader's unit is going to move up. So he needs to roll a 5+ to move. And they're going to move. They got a 6. So they're going to move 6 centimeters this way. So they activated. These other guys activated. And finally, the Chicken Walker, I think what he's going to do is he's going to take his free move and move up 6. And open fire on the Warlord's entourage right there. But to do so, he needs to roll a 7+ because he moved, so he needs to roll a 7+ to see if he can fire. He gets it. He gets a 7. He's rolling a full 10 dice with a shoot value of 4+. And what do we get there? Looks like 4 hits off of that volley. The Warlord's entourage has an armor of 4, so they're going to take 1 casualty from that. So this guy back here, I think that's Dengar. He's going to go away. He's going to go off to the happy hunting grounds. But the Warlord's elites there have the firefight rule, so if they can roll a 7+, they can shoot back. But they did not. They were surprised by the appearance of the Chicken Walker, and so they were not ready to engage in a firefight at this time, so they just take the casualty. They need to roll for courage, and they got a 5, which I think is enough. They normally need to roll a 3+. They get a bonus because the Warlord is right there, and they have a minus because they took 1 casualty, but that's still fine. So they're still well above water with the 5. So that is the Empire's activation. Now we go to the Warlord's activation. Nobody is suppressed, so nobody has to make a recovery roll. The Greater Xeno does have to make a wild charge roll, though, to see if he charges the Emperor's finest or the Chicken Walker. I think he's going to charge the Emperor because he looks like a softer target. So the Greater Xeno charges on a 5+. And he does. He wild charges. Charges into the elite infantry. He's got 1 wound he takes with him. The Xeno is above half strength, so he rolls 10 dice. His attack value is 3+. That's pretty good. So that is a total of 6 hits, and fortunately for the Greater Xeno, he has been upgraded with high-powered blades because he likes to just basically rend stormtroopers and such limb from limb. So that reduces the armor value of the elite infantry by 1, so they go from a 4 to a 3. So this is enough to cause 2 casualties on the elite infantry. But before those casualties are counted, they do get to counterattack. So rolling 10 dice with a defense value of 4+, because they're elites. So 2, 4. So that's enough to cause another wound on the Xenos. So he has 2 wounds. He has 3 wounds remaining. But he has soundly won combat. He caused more casualties on the elites than they caused on him. And the poor elites are now at less than 50% strength, so they're rolling 1 die for their courage instead of 2. So this might be the end of them. So their courage is normally 3+. They have the Emperor with them, so that makes it a 2+. They took 2 casualties, so that's going to be a -2 on their die roll. So let's see what happens. They need a 2+. So 3 minus 2 is a 1, so they fail their courage roll, but they don't rout, which is good. So they had to back up half their movement because they lost combat, and then they failed their courage check, so they're currently suppressed. That's this red marker here. And so before they can activate again, they're going to need to get rid of that suppression marker. So for right now, they are suppressed. Okay, that is the wild charge of the Greater Xeno. Okay, next I think these Berserk Infantry are going to take their free move, so they're going to move their 8 toward these Stormtroopers. These Light Infantry are going to take their free move, so they're going to move 8 over here. So they moved up 8 centimeters, and they're within sight of some Stormtroopers there. I think the Warlord's retinue here is going to open fire on the Chicken Walker and see what they can do. Their shoot skill is 4+. They have armor-piercing ammo, which is going to reduce the armor of the Chicken Walker by 1. So they're going to need a 4+ on the die rolls to get a hit. So that is a total of 5. The Chicken Walker normally has an armor of 5. That's reduced by 1 because of the armor-piercing ammo. But still, that's only enough to cause 1 wound, so he takes 1 wound. He does not have firefight, though, so he can't shoot back. So the Chicken Walker takes a wound. He's going to have to roll for courage. Courage of 3+. He is within 12 inches of the Warlord, just barely. So let's see what happens. And he's fine. And finally, we have the Militia. They need to move on a 6+. And they do. They want some scrap. We'll move them this way in case we need them to hold an objective or something. So they move their 6 centimeters this way. Now we go to the Empire. So the Emperor's finest there need to make a recovery check. So they're going to roll for their courage, but they're just rolling 1 die because the unit is at half strength or less. So their courage is 3+, plus they get a bonus because of the Emperor. So that's a 1. They get +1 because of the Emperor, so that's a 2, but they needed a 3+. They didn't get it. So they're still suppressed, and they lose 1 more strength point. So while the Emperor wasn't looking, this other elite infantry guy took off. So the Emperor is all alone now, and he is still suppressed. So now we have 3 units of heavy infantry, including Vader. Now Vader would really like to charge somebody, but he's not quite within range to do that. So I think this unit of heavy infantry here is going to take their free shoot action and shoot at the Berserk Infantry. They're hitting on a 6 because they're just a 5-man unit. And they got 1 hit, but that's not enough because the Berserk Infantry have an armor value of 2. But the Berserk Infantry will still need to make a courage check. And they're fine. These heavy infantry here are going to try to shoot at the light infantry there. It's a free action. They also roll 10 dice, and they need a 6. And they got 1 6, which is not enough to cause any wounds on the light infantry. But the light infantry do need to make a courage check. Oh, a 3. They might fail that. They unfortunately are not within 12 centimeters of the Warlord, so no Warlord bonus there. Their courage is normally 4+. They didn't take any wounds, but they rolled a 3, and they didn't get the Warlord bonus. So even though they didn't take any wounds, they are currently suppressed. So the Warlord's army of thugs fail under fire and become suppressed. So they will have to become unsuppressed before they can do anything useful. And finally, I think Vader would really like to charge these light infantry, particularly when they're suppressed. But he's not quite in range, but he's going to move up anyway to try to get within charging range at some point. So he needs a 5+. He's fine. So he's going to close in on these guys, and that should get him within range to charge. He really wants to use that lightsaber that we got for him. And finally, the chicken walker has to make a decision. Does he try to shoot at the Warlord's entourage right here? Or does he try to shoot at the Greater Xeno, which is going to have lunch with the Emperor here in a minute? So maybe he will move, maybe he will pivot this way, which is a free movement, and then shoot at the Greater Xeno to try to save the Emperor. He needs to roll a 7+ to shoot because he moved. And he does, so he gets to shoot. Rolling 10 dice because he's above half strength. Shooting skill of 4+, so that's 2, 3. But unfortunately, I think the Greater Xeno has an armor of 4, so that is not enough to wound the Greater Xeno, though he's going to have to make a courage check. And the Greater Xeno is fine. He rolled an 11, so he is absolutely courageous. So that is everybody on the Empire side. Now the Warlord side gets to go. Let's see if these light infantry here can become unsuppressed. And they do. They shake it off. They're unsuppressed, which is good. But that is essentially their activation for this turn. So they can't do anything else right now. Next, we're going to roll for the Greater Xeno's wild charge on the Emperor. His attack characteristic is 5+. 6. So he does. He wild charges the Emperor. So he rolls 10 dice. His attack value is 3+. 7 hits on the Emperor. The elite infantry have an armor of 4, so that is enough to do 1 wound. So the Emperor is dispatched and sent back to the dark side of the Force, or wherever. Good job, Greater Xeno. So because of that, all of the Empire troops now have to take a courage test because their commander has been killed. So that means the chicken walker right here, he's fine. And these 3 units of heavy infantry, so we'll start with this one and kind of go around. So all they need is a 4+. So the first one, they're fine. Second one, they're fine. And the third one, they're fine. So their courage holds. They're going to fight on in the name of the Sith. So that was the Greater Xeno. And I think these Berserk infantry here are in range to charge Vader, just barely, but it's in there. So they're going to wild charge Vader, which may not be the greatest idea ever, but let's see what happens. So attacking on a 5+. And they do not. They had second thoughts, apparently. So that counts as their activation, which is kind of sad because they might have done something there. But anyway, they thought about wild charging, but reconsidered. Fortunately for the Warlord's team, failing a wild charge does not end their activation. We're going to go into regular activations now. So the elite infantry are going to take a free action and shoot at the chicken walker, hitting on a 4+ with armor-piercing ammunition. Too bad they don't have a heavy weapon because those 6s would be double hits. But still, they got 6. Now it takes 5 normally to do a wound on the AT-ST there. But they have armor-piercing ammunition, so that takes it down to 4. These still get thrown away, so that's only 1 wound off the chicken walker. So he now has 2 wounds. 1 more wound, he'll be at half strength, and he'll start having mechanical difficulties. But the chicken walker needs to make a courage check because of that. And there's no more detachment commander to bolster his courage. But he's fine anyway. So that is the Warlord's retinue they've activated. And that's just about everybody with the exception of the militia, who will try to move on a 6+. And they do. So they move up just a little bit, and that is their activation. So now is the Empire's turn again. There are no suppressed units. There are no wild charges on the Empire side. So mostly I guess they're just going to shoot because their heavy infantry gets a free shoot action. So this heavy infantry unit here is going to shoot over at the Berserk infantry. One advantage to paying the points to upgrade a squad from 5 men to 10 men is that you get a better shooting value. So right now this 5-man squad, it gets to roll 10 dice, but it only hits on a 6. So they're going to shoot those Berserk infantry. Hitting on a 6, and I see 1 6. That is not enough to defeat the filthy rags of the Berserk infantry. But the Berserk infantry will still need to make a courage check, even though they didn't take a wound. Courage of 4+. So yeah, they squeaked it out with 1 point to spare. So that unit of stormtroopers activated. Vader is going to attempt to charge those light infantry. That's really what he wants to do. So he attacks on a 6+. He gets it, and he's just barely in range. So he charges in 6 centimeters and attacks those light infantry. So Vader and his squad there have Assault Doctrine, makes their attack value now 5+, and his lightsaber, which in the rules would be a mono-molecular blade. So any 6s when attacking count as 2 hits. So it's a big fight up here. Vader hits on a 5+, and any 6s count as 2 hits. Yeah, don't mess with Vader. That's quite a lot of 6s. 2 regular hits and 4 double hits, so that's 10 hits altogether. Wow. So 10 hits on the light infantry. Their armor is only 2, so they take 5 casualties. So a whole stand is basically chopped down, and I guess we wouldn't expect any less from Darth Vader. Before those casualties are tallied, though, they get to fight back, so maybe they can kill a stormtrooper or 2. Rolling 10 dice, hitting on a 5+, because there's 10 of them for the moment. And 4, it looks like 5. Heavy infantry have an armor of 3, so that's enough to kill 1. So 1 of Vader's stormtroopers is eliminated. So Vader definitely won combat, 5-1. So the light infantry need to make a courage check. They're only rolling 1 die, though, because they're down to half strength. Their courage is 4+. They're not within 12 centimeters of the leader. And they're going to have a -5 on their die roll because they took 5 casualties in this exchange. So this is not looking good. So 2 minus 5 is -3, and that squad of light infantry just scatters to the wind. They've had enough of this. No amount of credits is worth this. So what can I say? Vader does what Vader does. Now because Vader moved, that kind of opened up a channel between these stormtroopers and these berserk infantry over here. Let's see what the range is on that. That looks like 18 centimeters, so the stormtroopers can shoot at those berserk infantry and not be at extreme range. So that's what they're going to do. These stormtroopers here are going to open fire on the berserk infantry over there. Hitting on a 6 because there's only 5 of them. And no 6s at all, so these stormtroopers are pretty much on par with these stormtroopers from the movie. And they cause no wounds and no hits even on a bunch of Tusken Raiders in raggedy rags. So there you go. And finally, we have the Chicken Walker here. He's going to open fire on the Greater Xeno. Shooting on a 4+, and he's still rolling 10 dice because he's above half strength for the moment. 5 hits on the Greater Xeno. There's an armor of 4, so the Greater Xeno takes 1 more hit, so now he's down to below half strength. He needs to roll for some courage. So his courage is 3+. He rolled a 3, but he took 1 wound, so that makes it a 2. So he is suppressed, unfortunately, which is a drag because it would have been great if he could have charged the Chicken Walker on his next turn. But didn't happen that way. All right, so now it is the Warlord's turn. We have 1 unit that's suppressed. That is the Xeno there. And 4, so his courage is 3+, so that's enough to get him unsuppressed. So he's back in action, but can't do anything this turn. Wild charges, we have our Berserk Infantry here. Let's see if they want to wild charge Vader. And they do. So 10 Tusken Raiders go screaming into Darth Vader's slightly wounded squad of Stormtroopers. They're at full strength, they're rolling 10 dice, and they attack on a 3+ because close combat is their thing. It's their bag. 6. So 6 hits on the Stormtroopers. They have an armor value of 3, so 2 of them are eliminated. That brings the unit down to less than half strength. But before it does, before those wounds are accumulated, it gets to attack back. So the Stormtroopers have a defense value of 5+, and Vader is still in play. So any 6s, when attacking or defending, count as 2 hits. So he's still swinging that lightsaber. And that is just 2 hits. So that's enough to kill 1 Tusken Raider, and that is it. That's just dismal. So 1 Tusken Raider is eliminated. Vader must have tuckered himself out, killing those light infantry, because when he was charged by the Tusken Raiders, he didn't have any gas in the tank. So Vader's squad is down to less than half strength, so they're rolling 1 die for courage. And they're at a -2 because of casualties. So that is a 4. -2 is 2. So they failed their courage roll, so they are suppressed. So, because they lost combat, they have to back up. So they're going to back up about half their movement. And they are suppressed. So, suppressed and depressed. Okay, next, the elite infantry here are going to take their free action and shoot at the chicken walker. Hitting on a 4+ with armor-piercing ammo. So that could have been better, but that's still 4 hits, and with the armor-piercing ammo, that does 1 wound on the chicken walker, so he has 3 wounds off of 5, and he's now down to less than 50% strength points. So there's probably a console fire and smoke coming out of the cabin. So he is at -1 for any of his activation attempts, and he is at half maximum move. So he's stumbling around a bit. And finally, let's try to move our Rebel Militia. They move on a 6+. And they do. So they're going to move their 6. Move up to about there. And that is all the activations for the Warlord. Okay, now it's the Empire's turn. Vader's squad is suppressed, so they need to get unsuppressed. And they do, but that's all they can do this turn. So they're not suppressed, which is something. I guess this squad of stormtroopers will shoot at the Berserk infantry. It's a free action for them. Hitting on a 6. And 1 6. So not enough to cause a wound, but it is enough to cause the Berserk infantry to take a courage check. 4, I think that's enough. Yes, courage of 4+, so they pass their courage check just barely. So then this squad of stormtroopers is also going to shoot the Berserk infantry. It's a free action. Hitting on a 6. And they did a little bit better. They did cause, there's 2 6s, 3 6s. That's enough to cause 1 casualty on the side of the Berserk infantry. They lose another Berserker. Have to take a courage check. So that's an 8. -1 for the casualty is a 7, so that's fine. So they're okay. They're all right, those Berserkers. They're okay in my book. And finally we have the beloved chicken walker who's going to try to shoot the Xeno, but now he's down to half strength, so he's only shooting with 5 dice. Shooting is not a free activation for him. Normally he rolls a 6+, but now he needs to roll a 7+ because he's wounded, basically. And he doesn't do it. So that is the end of the Empire's activation. The chicken walker does not shoot. And we go to the Warlords again. Okay, nobody is suppressed, but we do have a couple of wild charges here. So the Xeno is going to try to wild charge the chicken walker. He needs a 5+ to do so. And he got a 5, just enough. So the Xeno, the wounded Xeno, staggers into the AT-ST to try to take it down. So the greater Xeno is rolling 5 dice because he's at 50% or less strength. He hits on a 3+, and he has high-powered blades. So that's 5 hits on the chicken walker. That's enough to do 1 wound. The chicken walker is going to defend on a 5+, and he has high-powered blades. And he only gets 2 hits. That's not enough to do any wounds. So the chicken walker has taken 4 wounds. He loses combat, so he has to back up, basically half his movement, and roll for courage. He's rolling 1 die. His courage is 3+, but it's -1 on the roll because of the wound. So he gets a 4, -1 is 3, so he is still around. Next, we have the wild charge of the Berserk infantry. They're going to go ahead and try to charge this unit of stormtroopers. They do so on a 5+. And they do. Charge! They charge in on the unit of stormtroopers. Rolling 10 dice and hitting on a 3+. So that's 7 hits total. That's enough to kill 2 stormtroopers. So 2 stormtroopers are removed from play. Stormtroopers are still above 50%, so they're going to roll 10 dice, hitting on a 5+. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is enough to kill 2. So that's a tie, which means the attacker backs up about half their movement. So they back up like that. So I'll have to check the tape, but I think so far in this game I've only had losers of close combat take a morale check. But I think actually both units have to take one if they've both suffered casualties. So that's what we'll do here. So the Stormtroopers are rolling 2 dice because they're still above 50%. And 5. Well, their courage is normally 4+, -2 for the casualties. So this is actually a 3, so they missed their roll, so they are suppressed. And the Berserkers have a courage of 4+, and they took 2 casualties. And they got a 7, -2 is 5, so they're fine, so they are not suppressed. Next, these elite infantry are going to shoot at the Chicken Walker. Hitting on a 4+. So that is 5 hits. That's enough to cause a wound, so the elite infantry finally blow up the Chicken Walker. So that is the end of one ATST. And there was much rejoicing. And finally, we'll roll to see if the militia want to move, if they want to do anything. You need a 6+. And they do, they move. So they move up 6 centimeters. Okay, so what I'm going to do here now is that the Warlords kind of started this game, so we're going to give the Empire one last activation here, one last turn. And then I'm going to call it good no matter what happens because I'm at the 3-hour mark on my cameras, and that's pretty much their capacity. Plus, I don't want to edit much more than that. So we're going to give the Empire one last set of activations to try to do something, to try to redeem their honor, and then see where we are on the map. So first things first, this squad here, right here, is going to try to recover. And they do, so they're no longer suppressed. But that's all they can do. Then Vader is going to charge these Tusken Raiders here so he can go out in a blaze of glory. First he needs to roll for the charge, and he gets it. Now he attacks. He's only rolling 5 dice because his squad is at half strength. But he did get 2 6s and a 4. So the 4 doesn't count because he needs a 5+, but the 2 6s generate 2 hits apiece. So that is 4 hits on the Tusken Raiders, which is enough to kill 2 of them. So they are going to attack back as they do. If they were charging, they'd hit on a 3+. On the defense, they only hit on a 6. So they're much better on the attack. But let's see what happens. And there's 2 6s there, which is not enough to cause any wounds. So the Tusken Raiders take 2 casualties, and they lose combat. So they're going to back up about half their movement. They are going to roll for courage, and they got a 5. -2 is a 3, so they are suppressed. They failed their courage roll, and they became suppressed. Now, this unit of Stormtroopers here is going to shoot at the suppressed unit of Tusken Raiders. They're at full strength, so they're rolling 10 dice, but they're only hitting on a 6 because there's only 5 of them in the squad. And still, that's 2 hits, so that's enough to kill another Tusken Raider. So 1 more is killed. They're going to need to make another courage check, and now they're just rolling 1 die because they're less than half strength. They fail their courage test again, so they take another casualty, and they are still suppressed. So that, I believe, is the Empire's turn. So, where are we at? Well, I guess it might be fair to say that the Warlord is kind of in control of this half of the board. There is a wounded Xeno over here, some lowly rebel militia there, a almost full-strength unit of elite infantry right there. So they're not in terrible shape. Over on this side of the board, the Empire is still holding their own. They have a full-strength unit of Stormtroopers right here. Vader is still on the board, though his squad is pretty much decimated. And there is a weakened squad right here. And each team has secured 1 downed spacecraft and some wanted fugitives, and no doubt some loot and valuable intelligence. So let's call that a draw and assume that both teams return to their respective fortresses with honor. Okay, gang, that is a wrap on today's Micro Machine and Hot Wheels-sized game of Xenos Rampant. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back real soon with some more tabletop wargaming stuff. But until then, happy holidays, everybody. Thanks for stopping in, and we'll catch you next time.